Yeah, so I just wanted to give most of the folks in the room are members of the River Herring Network, but I wanted to give a kind of a quick overview of the River Herring Network. If you don't know what it is, and maybe kind of use this as a place for discussion, if there's any places where that makes sense, or just to let folks know it's there and try to get, if people aren't part of it, to get more folks there. So basically what the River Herring Network is and has been, it's something that I think our first meeting was probably 3 years ago, Bailey, something like that. It's really built out of a lot of local work that I've been part of, folks at Maine have been part of, and really is parallel to a lot of the stuff that like Landis was talking about, where there's a lot of us NGO folks, me included, that are working with harvesters in some places and working with the state in some places, maybe connected to the ASMFC in other places, and then with researchers at places like Maine or University of Massachusetts. And most folks probably know here that all these people are kind of in their own bins and in their own silos and not usually talking to each other. So it's just from a lot of these relationships that is actually like on a canoe ride. I was bullshitting with Ann Hayden at Manamet that does a lot of this similar kind of work, and we were like, why don't we try to put something together that really connects a lot of these people, whether it's policy or research or management or harvest. And so this is just a kind of a little picture of the places and this was just the first meeting that we had in 2019 or 20, where each of those stars kind of represented some entity or person that was at the first meeting. And so and there's a lot of other NGOs like TNC and those and agency folks at NOAA, DMR, those places that have been part of this. And so again, the idea is to take these bins of towns and other places, and really I think this kind of builds on a lot of what I was thinking as I was watching the presentation on Elvers, is that I think to be able to make some of those cases on whether or not we should have more quota and get some of that policy work done, it doesn't happen without a study being done that kind of checks the boxes it needs to, and the research capacity, and then eventually like the harvest. Because to me, Alewives and Elvers are really similar in that, I keep forgetting his name, Jason, like his presentation, he left that and was like, I'd love to do more, it would be more powerful if we could do this kind of work more places, but we don't have the manpower or the knowledge to be able to do it. And that's where harvesters, either benefit from work that we do, and really have the most capacity in the whole state to be doing some of this work. So that's really what the network is. And like I said, it's very group led, and so all the agendas that we kind of put together are put together by conversation, like meetings specifically, where we say, what do you guys want to be working on? What do you want to be talking about? And then like specific kind of one-off conversations with people that are really kind of leaders in their area. And so to me, that's like a selling point for this whole thing. That really is, if you're coming to these meetings and participate in this, it's really group-led, and it's not just a bunch of research. Hopefully, people that are there can weigh in on this, but it's not just a bunch of academic researchers saying, oh, we should know this just so we can get a paper out of it, or managers trying to figure out how to do something that isn't part of a flexible management system, and that harvesters are getting something out of it in community. So I don't, other than really setting it up, I figured I'd talk just quickly about our focus in 2023, because a big piece of this connection stuff has been to figure out that collaborative research thing, like what kind of work could we be doing research-wide that isn't just to do research, that really has practical value for increasing harvests where we can, or establishing harvests in places with less than 10 years of data and things like that, to try to bring folks together to do that. And really what sort of has come we had a meeting in December, I think it was, where we had our first in-person meeting that we could have in a while, because COVID was finally kind of going away. And we brought folks together and really prioritized some research work, and a lot of that ended up prioritizing the juvenile part of the life history of river herring. And so looking at when they're leaving, why they're leaving then, and then finding better ways to figure out how healthy they are leaving, because I'm sure everyone here knows, like that's usually like the the second thing that comes into your head when you start working with alewives is you start like counting adults and things like that, and pretty quickly you realize that those little fish leaving in the late summer and through the fall are what's coming back, and so you start, just thinking a lot more about that. And the same's happening in the research field, where they're starting to really think about those juvenile fish and what happens to those. And so that's what our focus really is on this year, is putting together like research that we all work on together to collect a bigger data set that could be used, whether it's for something at the ASMFC or a local harvest level, and try to figure that out. So things are still fluid, but it does look like we're gonna have 2 interns that are working for the network this year that we're hoping can help, add capacity to local folks. So if Jeff wants to participate in doing some more juvenile sampling that he may or may not be doing, or temperature logging in the streams and ponds, we'll have interns to be able to kind of help out to get things where they need to be and download them and all that kind of stuff. But what it's looking like is this year is going to have sort of 2 focuses, one being on expanding our temperature work from last year. I'll get to that in a second. So it's using these little temperature loggers that collect a temperature data point 3 times a day, or I think it's actually once an hour, in different places in the stream, and to be able to look at that on a broader scale. And then also to start looking more closely at the health of the juveniles when they're leaving the ponds and timing of that. And then probably a little bit of work into the food for all those fish while they're in ponds, to start doing zooplankton sampling in more places, and just get a better picture of the productivity of our systems, because it really takes all those different pieces to be part of it. So all that to say is that we're trying to expand that this year, and if I know a lot of people are already connected with this, but if you're someone that's harvesting somewhere that I know, I think out by you, Daryl, I think you're part of one of those long-term monitoring sites for the interactions committee. So there's probably a bunch of more than this data that's being collected there. But even if you're not sure of that, or if you would be willing to put in some of these data loggers or measure some juvenile fish leaving, or just want to figure out whether you want to do that, get a hold of me, and hopefully we can add a few folks if everyone here is not already in the network, because unfortunately they have been Zoom meetings for the most part up to this point, so it comes with that kind of pain in the butt, but we're trying to work more into in-person meetings as things move that way. And then the other big piece of this has been, so there are you could find if you Google River Herring Network, you'll come to our webpage, and we're trying to work on other parts that are just communication kind of things that might be to the public, but might be useful for folks in the network, like being able to, so this screenshot is just something of a kind of run counts where we have and are hoping to build out, so you could go online and even in season, if we can start tweaking this and getting it better, be able to look at runs returning up and down the coast and kind of expanding that. We actually got a little grant from the Northeast Fisheries Management Council to work with them because they have the same goals to get this data further out there. So it might be something that expands beyond Maine. So these are all pieces. Again, I won't go way into it, but if people aren't part of this, it would be great to have, feel free to shoot me your email or phone number or something like this after, and it'd be awesome to bring more folks in. And then something else that's coming up over the next year that we're working on a grant for, and honestly are probably going to be doing whether or not we get the grant or not. I think the other piece of this conversation at the management level is I think alewives are one of the best examples for what you get as far as capacity from really including harvesters in this kind of in the research and in the policy making and stuff like that. And so we're going to try to really think hard about how do we impress upon those state and federal managers not just what you get from input and participation from harvesters and communities, but what you lose if you didn't. So anybody here that and everybody that deals with the alewives here, probably not just beaver dams, at least, or traps them or does something like that. So if you go away for 10 years, then that's the end of that run. And so there's a lot of things I think could be part of the conversation on what happens if these harvesters go away. And I think it's, you know, it's not part of their calculation when they're thinking about whether or not we should have a run here or keep a run going, or what the harvest level should be. And so a big idea behind that is figuring out a way to show them, like, that's fine to, you know, talk about sustainable fisheries and making sure that we're minimizing our risk. But in fact, in a lot of places, if we get rid of a harvest, that's the biggest risk. And that really isn't how they calculate and make their decisions. So that's I think an overall goal that really connects to the group here. So I'll leave that up because it's just this is like I didn't know I was presenting today, but this is something we're gonna present at the, there's a ASMFC kind of, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Council, kind of equivalent of this group that's really the entire East Coast, where they run this thing to sort of bring in people, and it actually gets pretty decent attendance. And there's a meeting coming up, is it Monday? I think it's on Monday, their next meeting. And so I'm presenting this, and this is kind of gonna be the, you know, our discussion point in that group, and saying, like, introducing and saying, like, let's think about how we document what happens if we don't have these harvesting communities involved. And I think hopefully it'll end up showing that we should be thinking more about that when we're making decisions. So I'll leave it up there so you can see kind of what I'm hoping to talk about in those places. And then if anybody has any other questions about the network, then I'm happy to answer them. Less, all right.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys get out of it easy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike, I appreciate it.
Well,